I've spent thousands of hours sitting in these quiet rooms, just watching the clock tick down those final 24 hours. Right now, I'm looking at a daughter sitting by her father's bed, gripping his hand so tight her knuckles are white. She's terrified because she thinks he's struggling. Every time his breathing hitches or a long, heavy pause stretches out for 10 seconds, she holds her own breath, wondering if that was the last one he'll ever take. Then there's that sound, a deep, wet rattling in his chest that seems to vibrate through the entire room. To her, it sounds like he's choking or in desperate pain, and it's breaking her heart because it looks like a violent fight for life. She's looking at me with pleading eyes, begging for a way to stop the suffering she's sure is happening right in front of her. But what she sees as a tragedy is actually something else entirely. After years of sitting in this same chair with hundreds of different families, I've started to see a very specific pattern that almost no one talks about. We are so busy being afraid of the noise and the stillness that we miss the hidden logic behind it all. What looks like a body failing is actually a system working through a very organized, natural checklist. It's the moment where the atmosphere shifts and the body begins to let go in a way that is far more intentional than anyone realizes. The air in the room feels different now, almost heavy, as we enter this final 24-hour window. I see the family members leaning in close, searching for a sign of recognition, but there is a strange distance in the patient's eyes that wasn't there just hours ago. They are physically present, but their spirit seems to be drifting toward a place we simply cannot follow yet. It's deeply unsettling for everyone watching, because it feels like the person they love is becoming a total stranger. Then, the physical changes start to manifest in ways that look like a medical emergency to an untrained eye. Their hands and feet begin to turn a mottled, bluish-purple color, and when the daughter touches her father's skin, she gasps because he feels ice cold. She immediately reaches for every heavy blanket in the room, desperate to warm him up, convinced he is suffering in the cold. But this is the first major misunderstanding, and it's the point that almost everyone gets completely wrong. The body isn't cold because it's losing a fight. It's actually being incredibly strategic with its remaining energy. It is systematically pulling circulation away from the skin to protect the heart and brain, following a biological checklist that is older than language itself. But if the body is being so smart and intentional, why does the process often sound so loud and look so violent to the family? There is a hidden logic to this transition that changes everything once you see it. I will now generate the 3 paragraphs for the phenomenon section, focusing on the breathing changes, the mental distance, and the physical sounds of the final hours. As the clock keeps ticking, the most striking change isn't the silence, but the rhythm of the breathing itself. It often shifts into a pattern of shallow breaths, followed by a deep sigh, and then a terrifyingly long pause. You sit there, heart pounding, counting the seconds. 1, 2, 3, waiting for the next intake of air that feels like it's never coming. It looks like they are gasping for life, but there's a strange calmness on their face that doesn't match the chaos of the sound. Then there is the lack of response that feels like a wall has been built between you and the person you love. You can whisper their name or squeeze their hand, but they don't squeeze back anymore. Their eyes might stay half open, fixed on a point in the corner of the room that you simply cannot see. It's as if they are watching a movie that only they have the ticket for. Families often think the person is already gone, but the truth is much more mysterious than a simple blackout. And then comes the sound that haunts most families more than anything else, the terminal rattle. It's a gurgling noise that happens with every single breath, making it sound like the person is drowning in their own body. It's incredibly loud in a quiet room, and it feels like a physical blow to anyone sitting nearby. You want to reach out and clear their throat, desperate to stop that vibration. But while it sounds like a violent struggle to us, the reality inside the body is very different. When that rattling sound fills the silence, the room suddenly feels like a crisis zone. I see family members flinch with every breath, their eyes filled with a specific kind of horror. They are absolutely convinced their loved one is drowning or desperately fighting for air, feeling every jagged vibration in their throat. It looks like a physical struggle, a painful end to a long journey, and they look at me pleadingly, certain that something has gone terribly, violently wrong in these final moments. Then they touch those cold, purple-spotted hands, and the panic reaches a new level. To them, it feels like the person is freezing, shivering on the inside, even if they aren't moving. Every human instinct tells them that this coldness and these strange markings are signs of absolute biological chaos. They see it as a body losing a war, a person suffering through a cold and lonely transition. It feels like a tragedy of discomfort that needs to be fixed immediately. But this is exactly where our eyes deceive us. What we interpret as a drowning struggle is actually a body whose senses have drifted so far away that it no longer feels the need to clear its throat. The noise is for us, not for them. That coldness isn't a sign of shivering. It's the body's final, brilliant act of self-preservation, focusing all its remaining warmth on the heart and soul. What looks like a fight is actually the most profound state of rest. People often think the irregular breathing is a sign of a frantic struggle for oxygen, but it's actually the brain's autopilot taking over. In those last 24 hours, the respiratory center simplifies its job, focusing only on the most basic reflex. This creates those long pauses that feel like an eternity to us, but for the patient, it's a rhythmic slowing down. It's not a gasp for more, it's a gentle letting go of the need to work. But why does the skin change so drastically during this quiet time? That bluish tint on the knees and the icy feeling in the hands isn't a sign of a body in distress. It's actually the most efficient distribution of resources you'll ever witness. The body is performing a final, brilliant triage, pulling blood away from the extremities to keep the heart and the spirit cradled in warmth for as long as possible. It looks like a shutdown, but it's really a deep concentration of life at the core. Yet, even as the body focuses inward, something else is shifting. The mental distance we see is perhaps the most misunderstood part of this entire sequence. As the body's chemistry changes, it naturally produces a state of deep sedation, almost like a protective fog that settles over the mind. They aren't gone in the way we fear. They are simply transitioning into a dreamlike state where our world becomes background noise. It's a biological kindness that ensures the person is insulated from the very chaos that we are feeling in the room. This is the hidden piece. When you step back, you realize this isn't a series of random failures, but a highly organized checklist of the soul. From the rhythm of the lungs to the cooling of the skin, every single change is a step toward a profound rest. It's a universal language that every human body knows how to speak when the time comes. Understanding this pattern changes the way you sit in that chair. It turns a scene of perceived violence into one of quiet, intentional transition. I remember a night with a woman named Sarah. Her son David was pacing the room, his eyes fixed on the space where the monitor used to be. Every time Sarah's breathing stopped for those long, 10-second intervals, David would freeze, his face contorting in agony. He was convinced she was suffocating, fighting a losing battle for every cubic inch of oxygen. To him, the silence between breaths wasn't peace. It was a terrifying void where his mother was drowning. Then the sound started, that deep, wet rattling that fills every corner of a quiet room. David grabbed my arm, his voice shaking as he asked if we could do something to stop the choking. He saw the mottled purple skin on her hands and started piling every blanket in the house on her, certain she was freezing to death. It was a scene of total panic because everything he saw looked like a violent biological disaster, but the truth was hidden just beneath. I sat David down and asked him to look past the noise at her expression. While his heart was racing, Sarah's face was as smooth as marble, completely devoid of any distress. I explained that her body wasn't failing, it was simplifying, focusing all its remaining warmth on her heart and her soul. The coldness in her hands wasn't suffering, but a brilliant act of biological focus. As I spoke, the tension in the room evaporated, replaced by a heavy, profound stillness that changed his perspective. The most incredible moment happened just an hour before the end. Even though Sarah had been distant for a full day, she suddenly squeezed David's hand with a strength that shouldn't have been possible. It wasn't a reflex. It was a clear, intentional signal through the fog. It proved that while the body follows its clinical checklist, the person inside remains cushioned and aware in their own way. David finally stopped fighting the process and just sat there, witnessing a transition that finally felt like peace. Everything we've been taught to fear about these final hours, the cold skin, the strange sounds, the long silences, is actually the body's way of providing a final, quiet sanctuary. When you stop looking at the rattle as a sign of drowning and start seeing it as a body that has simply stopped the heavy labor of clearing its path, the fear in the room begins to dissolve. You aren't watching a violent struggle. You are witnessing a biological system gracefully handing over the keys to a much deeper rest. It is the most misunderstood kindness of our existence. There is an incredible, ancient logic to how we let go, a map that the body follows with more precision than we ever could while we were healthy. Every cooling hand is a concentration of life at the core, and every long, quiet pause is a moment where the spirit is already testing the waters of a different kind of peace. Once you recognize this checklist, the tragedy disappears, and you're left with the realization that the person you love is being held by a process that is far more intentional than we ever imagined. It's the moment where the physical world finally lets go of its grip. That shift in perspective changes everything about how we sit in those quiet rooms. It transforms a scene of terror into a moment of profound, shared transition. If this helped you see the end of life with a little less fear, I'd love for you to join our community and share your thoughts in the comments below.